All right. Salutations to you as well, Zach. Thank you, everybody. Members only stream. Apologize about yesterday. I did an interview with a sports psychologist, the guy that wrote, Jim Murphy, the guy that wrote Inner Excellence, which is the book that A.J. Brown was reading on the sideline in the playoffs that everybody made a big deal out of. And I planned on just putting it out in its entirety to the members only, and the audio was just crap. He was at a hotel. He's at his son's lacrosse tournament, and he was in a hotel on the Wi-Fi there, and it wasn't good. So I got to do some doctoring of it, and not an excuse, just an explanation for yesterday. So I'll probably listen. It's either this or fix my lawnmower. So I'll probably spend a long time with you guys today. The Athletic did what they love to do, which is they compiled a bunch of anonymous executive quotes. I believe it was Mike Sando from The Athletic about the draft and their takes and opinions on the draft. So I want to go over the Texans, the Colts. Let's see. We'll do the Texans, then we'll do the Titans, then we'll do the Jaguars because we have to hear the magnificent James Gladstone, the GM of the Jaguars. And if I have time for it, we'll get to the Colts at the end of that. So let's start off. This is just as a refresher for everybody, in case you haven't really visited the draft in a little while since it concluded. The Texans draft class in its entirety, they've been getting a lot of praise for Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, and this is kind of what the anonymous executives focused on here. They have Tank Dell coming off of injury and lost Stephon Diggs, but man, when Dell gets healthy, adding the receivers they got, Higgins and Noel to go along with Nico Collins. Wow, C.J. Stroud's going to have weapons galore. Collins and Higgins are both 6'4". You don't have physical enough corners to cover those two 6'4" wide receivers, the executive said and added. Okay, I've got one issue with this. They have Tank Dell coming off of injury, and then when you add him to the mix, I feel like that's getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. I think you guys know how I feel about this. Tank Dell, I am looking at as 2026. If he comes back in 2025 and he looks anything like his normal version of himself, it'll be a great triumph, and I don't think it's impossible. I just don't think that's the kind of pressure I want to be putting on my own expectations or on Tank Dell himself, because it was a brutal injury. That was a really brutal injury when you tear multiple tendons and ligaments for a guy whose game is all about speed and quickness and burst. I think it's just a lot to ask for him to come back. Maybe around the playoffs or something, it'll be a welcome surprise. I don't think we're getting too far ahead of ourselves in expecting Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins to contribute this year, just because they do have some physical traits that you can add into the mix, and it immediately has an effect on the defense, whether they're fully polished or not. With Jaden Higgins, he's 6'4". He's Nico Collins in terms of size, athleticism, everything else. They're very, very similar. The one thing that I feel really confident about with Jalen Higgins is that, God, did I say Jalen or Jaden? Whatever, Jaden Higgins is, he has the size, he has the wingspan, he has the catch radius, but he also has a ridiculously low drop rate. He's got one of the lowest drop rates in this draft class amongst wide receivers for guys that were in the top 10. And that's something I think you can bank on. I don't think all of a sudden he's going to be all butterfingers when he gets to the NFL. So I think that there's going to be moments and opportunities where even if he doesn't have great separation on 50-50 balls, he's going to come down with a ball. How great is he? How high is his ceiling? I don't know. But I feel pretty confident because also people gush about his football character, his work ethic, his willingness to work at it. I think he's going to get better and better at that stuff along the way. But in his rookie year, he is at the very least a big target with good hands. Jalen Noel, likewise, with a slot receiver where he's probably going to spend the majority of his time. It's not that he can't play on the outside, but it's a little bit more nuanced. And the slot receiver, as Sean had pointed out this morning, Cecil Shorts. Cecil Shorts had said that it's almost like the mental challenge for a slot receiver after the quarterback might be the biggest one on the team, because you got to read coverages, you have to anticipate, you got to find seams and soft spots in the zone, and you're doing it against NFL defenses that are much more adept at disguising those coverages beforehand, and then obviously you're going against a higher caliber of athlete every week. But just by virtue of getting his speed on the field, especially if Christian Kirk is injured or whomever else it might be, it does have an effect. The defense has to account for not letting this guy slip past us. So you got two big guys on the outside. You've got Jalen Noel or Christian Kirk or whomever it might be that is that speed threat in the middle. He can be an influence even if he's not fully polished. So I feel good about that. Next anonymous executive, talking about the offensive line. They got out from under the money of Tunsil. Ursary surely is not Tunsil. He's a stiffer, taller guy who they can probably get by within their scheme and what they're going to do. They don't need a downhill physical left tackle. I've got an issue with that. Another exec compared the Texans to the Bengals because both teams have prioritized weaponry over the offensive line. Got a little bit of an issue with that. Not as big an issue. The issue I have with the guy who says that Ursary doesn't fit the scheme a certain way, nobody actually knows what the scheme is going to look like. I think that's somebody that sees, Nick Caley came from the Rams, and the Texans have been running conventionally a Shanahan-type system these last couple of years. It ignores two things. One, that we don't know exactly what Nick Caley is going to want to do on offense. Two, it actually ignores three things. Two, Nick Caley has spent way more time in New England than he has with the Rams. And three, the Rams are not an outside zone-based scheme anymore. So you can't really take anything from where Nick Caley came from and expect to know exactly what you're going to get. The other part that I take umbrage with is in the executive saying that they don't need a downhill physical left tackle. Ursary came from a program in Minnesota where they run a lot of outside zone, and he did a lot of outside zone blocking, and he was really, really good at it for a guy that's 6'6", 330 pounds, way better than, and I'm including, even when you watch him play the first couple times, I was guilty of this. I thought, he's kind of stiff-legged, he's a bigger guy, and then you watch more and you realize, okay, he actually was really good at it. And I credit John Harris for pointing that out to me, because I had seen scouting reports before I had actually watched Ursary where they said, well, he's just not really that big, but not big enough for a zone scheme or what have you. He actually does a really good job at that. But I think because he's been in a scheme that's more of an outside zone-based scheme, he doesn't have as much experience with the road grade blocking, with the double teams and running duo and leads and powers and all of that. So I think he very much is physically capable of doing that, especially at offensive tackle. I'm a little bit more questionable about how much of an easy transition it might be for him at guard. But he's 6'6", 330, and he's not sloppy at all in terms, he's weight room strong, and his strength shows up on the field. It's a little bit of just learning the run blocking in the NFL. I think he's very physically capable of doing it. He's just not as far along as I think Kelvin Banks in the run game was ready to go in the NFL run game. I think with Ursary, it's going to take some learning, and maybe he figures it out 2 weeks into camp. Maybe it takes a while longer. Executive. What was the third comment there? Oh, comparing the Texans to the Bengals because both teams have prioritized weaponry over the offensive line. I do, as much as the annoying debate that I keep falling into is, hey, are they drafting for need or are they drafting best player available? This, by and large, I think, Nick, even if maybe he had a preference for offensive linemen and wide receivers, in this draft, I don't think it's a matter of prioritizing wide receivers over offensive linemen. The indications looked very much like they could have been trying to go after an offensive guard in the first round when they were trading up, or an offensive tackle in Kelvin Banks. They might have also been trying to trade up for Ibuka or Matthew Golden after Gray Zabel was taken at 18. I know it's because Donovan Jackson was the guy who was off the board when the Texans traded back. I think it's tempting to think, they were totally going after an offensive lineman. It could have been any one of those guys that I just mentioned, or who knows, maybe it could have been Tyler Warren or Loveland or anybody else along the way. So I think reading too much into the first three picks in the draft and saying, well, they took two wide receivers and one offensive lineman, so they're clearly prioritizing wide receivers. I don't get it. Especially, and they traded up for Ursary as well. I see no need to create a hierarchy of prioritization in this draft. Headline material. Next anonymous executive on the Texans draft. The quarterback is going to have an 8 to 10 year relationship, the quarterback being C.J. Stroud, with those two Iowa State kids, and I think he's going to have a great year. Higgins can play outside the numbers in press coverage and win. Outside the numbers in press coverage and win. the way he times his jumps, makes contested catches, wins on fade balls, jumps over guys. I love him. Love him. Noel is all business. That keeps coming about. Jalen Noel is that the kid's just does everything the right way. I know the Senior Bowl was big, as it has been for wide receivers and Nick Caserio. Caserio is basically every wide receiver he's drafted other than John Mechie has gone to the Senior Bowl. So being able to get eyes on them at the Senior Bowl and seeing the way they practice, day in, day out, drill in and drill out, seems to be a big deal with Caserio. And one of the questions that people had with Jaden Higgins reportedly going into the Senior Bowl was, okay, he looks like he wins a lot of 50-50 balls, but let's see how he does it versus a really good caliber of competition. And at Senior Bowl, he had a lot of tests, and he was doing really well with that part of the game, the physicality part of the game. So it's hard to find anybody who – a lot of the draft experts or anonymous executives or what have you, they pretty much unanimously say, yeah, Higgins and Noel are really good for where they went in the draft. Nobody accuses the Texans of reaching on those guys like they have with some of the other draft picks. So far, so good for whatever the anonymous executives that are willing to sell their souls to talk to a reporter are. Let's get to the comments before we move on to the rest of the AFC South. I'm going to try to do a better job of bookmarking these, especially for when I go long, because I know a lot of you guys obviously are not watching. The majority of you are not watching live. So I'll bookmark. You see, I've got it already written down in the description. I just got to plug in the timestamps afterwards. I want to see Dell come in for a couple snaps on week 17 of the season. That would be cool. That would be a big victory. The tricky thing is, for him to come in week 17 of the regular season, he'd have had to have been out there practicing in that window and looked really, really good because there's roster spots to be had at that point in the year, but we'll see. But not till then. Gotcha, Brandon. Agreed, let's not rush Tank to return. This is an awkward comparison to make, and I don't mean to downplay Dylan Horton or any of the other various Texans that have, John Mechie guys who have fought to come back from cancer, but I've kind of got that same vibe right now about those two guys. I don't like when Dylan Horton or John Mechie were coming back from cancer, you feel like there's a greater obstacle here than the timing of the regular season. And I just, for the sake of Tank Dell and the rest of his career, I want that knee to be locked in, battle tested. Just, it's been months that he's felt great before he comes out. And I know the playoffs, it's not a short-sighted goal or what have you, but even if it's the playoffs, I don't want there to be any inkling at all of pushing him out before he's perhaps 100% ready. Dell's going to come up big in the playoffs. Just watch. I will. Rich boy, I'm not saying it can't happen. I just don't want to even think about it right now. I just don't want to. I want to put that there, and I don't want to put that pressure on him the way that James Gladstone is putting pressure on other folks. Let's see. Dell in week 17 could be a morale booster. Dell coming out on the field, I think like jogging onto the field with the flag or something, could be big enough. I have seen Ronaldo recover from an injury like that. It has been done before, hoping for the best. Yeah, and I'm not saying he can't do it. It's just the timing of it. It was late in the season. If that injury had happened earlier in the season, I might be a little bit more optimistic and antsy about it. I just don't. Yeah, I think we're pretty much all in the same boat. Nobody's sitting here saying he can't do it. We do need a physical downhill left tackle. That's what we've been lacking. Thank you. So to bring up what the one executive said, that when he talked about, there it is, the last sentence in the first paragraph, they don't need a downhill physical left tackle. Yes, they do. What the hell are you talking about? I think they have emphasized physicality with what they're trying to do on the offensive line. And I think with Laramie Tunsil, I've seen people say, well, hey, that was a salary cap move or what have you. No, if you have, it's more than that. It's way more than that. And I don't think people maybe that haven't watched Laramie Tunsil play for the last several years understand exactly all of the drawbacks that come with Laramie Tunsil and him being, routinely every other year the highest paid offensive tackle in the league. That if you want to be a tough, physical, swarm-type football team, that's not Laramie Tunsil's style of play. And it doesn't mean he's a bad football player, but he's just passable as a run blocker, and he's incredible as a pass protector. And we don't even have to get into the pre-snap penalties and how much pressure that puts on the rest of the offensive line. When you've got rookie interior offensive linemen and you're trying to block for 3rd and 12 instead of 3rd and 7, or you're blocking for 3rd and 7 instead of 3rd and 2 because your left tackle just doesn't care. Yeah, that stuff all factors in. If you feel awesome about your left tackle, you keep paying your left tackle. There's not a team in the league that thinks, yep, we got exactly who we want at left tackle, but, there's other tough considerations here, so we're going to let him go. No, you figure out a way to pay your stud offensive left tackle. It was more than just that. I wonder if I didn't make this a members-only stream. There's an awful lot of you in here right now. I might as well bring it up. I have a members section that is $1 a month. It's the cheapest I'm allowed to offer, and it's mostly just to try to, on days when I don't feel like I'm fully prepared, I can just go. So if you'd like to join up, please go to my homepage. I don't have the link in there right now. I'll put it later, and you can do that. But usually what I can also do on the members-only stream is I hit every single comment, but I'm feeling like this is not the case, that this is a public one. So I can't hit every single comment the way I typically do. So let's get on to, I feel like doing the Jaguars, just so I can listen to the magnificent Gladstone speak once more about Travis Hunter. Here is James Gladstone, the brand spanking new boy wonder GM of the Jaguars, talking about the magnificence that is Travis Hunter.
As we sit here, Travis Hunter is a Jacksonville Jaguar, and really what comes to mind for me, right? Thinking about the sport of football and really the power of the game itself, right? Its capacity to ignite belief, right? Belief in ourselves, belief in others, right? Belief in achieving what many may deem impossible. Travis Hunter, he embodies belief, right? He's a rare person. He's a rare player, but he's also a reminder that the boundaries of the game of football were built to be challenged. And so the decision to select him was actually a statement for how we plan to move, who we are, and we want him to be nothing more than him. Because when he is, he elevates the space around him. From the football field to the city, to the game of football itself, Travis Hunter is who we've been hunting up.
Yeah!
Couldn't be more jacked to be sitting right here beside him and introduce you all to the man of the hour.
Widespread applause in a press conference. Interesting. Boy, so much to unpack there. The GM getting up after the first night of the draft and acting like he just won the Super Bowl because you traded up to draft somebody who I like. I love. There's nothing about this that I'm about to say that is against Travis Hunter at all. I'm excited to have him in the division while also fearing it. And yet, man, if you juxtapose the magnificent Gladstone and everything he said about Travis Hunter right there, compared to what D'Amico said after they drafted C.J. Stroud and traded up aggressively for Will Anderson, D'Amico consistently throughout that year said, hey, these guys have a lot of pressure on them. They put a lot of pressure on themselves. I don't need to add on to that pressure. I don't need them to feel like it's all about them. Magnificent Gladstone comes in and in pointing out that he and the Jaguars are the ones that are making this statement because, Travis Hunter here, he's how much pressure can you pile on that kid? Not only is he a very talented football player who did impressive things in college, cool, he's going to redefine expectations and transform the game of football. We will lift football up out of the dark ages. We will lift them up out of the muck. The evolution of football is upon us. Behold, I have brought this to you, the NFL. This is not just a victory for the city of Jacksonville, but for football at large. Good for you. I love Travis Hunter. I think that if they're talking about transforming the game of football immediately off the bat, I think you're doing the classic thing that first-year GMs and first-time head coaches do. Liam Cohen, a first-time head coach, is you're putting the cart ahead of the horse and you're trying to do everything all at once. Let him learn how to play wide receiver in the NFL, okay? Can we put transforming the game of football on the back burner for a sec? And first, let's get him in and teach him how to play wide receiver. And then, all right, cool. Then maybe you can have him play some defense. All right, he's handling it. What is your hurry? What exactly is your rush to let Travis Hunter know that he's charged with transforming the game of football off the bat. Let's see what the executives said about this. Let's see. I can't name a dual threat guy who played both ways at the level they are drafting him at. Deion Sanders, Rod Woodson, they all settled into whatever their position is. As soon as he gets one injury and is out for 3 weeks, he's going to be on one side of the ball. 100% that. Like, let's remember that Shohei Ohtani, the guy who transformed baseball, and in transforming baseball, by the way, if you're the only person doing it, you're not really transforming the sport. Yes, you're defying expectations. Right now, Shohei Ohtani is a one-way player. It's magnificent and it's incredible is what he's done, but he's playing baseball, which, yes, is it's hell on a UCL, but on the body at large, not nearly as taxing as the game of football. Not to mention, they're playing outside in Jacksonville for half of those games, playing 120 snaps in 98-degree weather and high humidity. It's asking way too much of this kid right now, even though he wants it and he wants that challenge. Let him learn how to play wide receiver first. I mean, I hope they don't heed my advice. I hope they expect him to play 120 snaps in game one. The general feeling on the Jaguars was that they got a great player in Hunter, but paid too much by sending their 2026 first-round pick to Cleveland as part of the deal to move up 3 spots. I'm cool with it. I actually like it. I do. As much as I don't need the magnificent Gladstone trumpeting himself and how much change and how revolutionary they are in doing this, in the same vein as trading up for Will Anderson, if you feel like you got a special guy, you don't get stuck to the Jimmy Johnson trade chart and go for it. I totally approve them going for it. I don't know about proclaiming it a revolutionary move right off the bat when you've still got 2 more days of the draft to go. Anonymous scout or exec. The Jags have a young GM who, by all accounts, would be more analytically inclined in his decision-making in an organization that you think holds analytics in high regard. And what do? They do the opposite of the analytical decision by trading up to select a non-quarterback. And I guess that's the other question is, okay, if he was just a wide receiver, and I think a lot of teams probably looked at it this way, we got to evaluate this guy as we want to use him as a defensive back. How good of a defensive back is he? How much better would he have been if he had been focused solely on being a defensive back? And then maybe we get some lanyap after that, a little bit of extra on top. Likewise with wide receiver. How good is he as a wide receiver? Is there a little extra cushion there we give him because he wasn't able to focus on it? One of the dumbest things I saw on the draft broadcast, and I'm not calling Booger McFarland stupid in general. Sometimes when you're on a long broadcast, as I do a 4-hour radio show every day. I say at least 7 stupid things a day because when you talk that long, you say a lot of dumb things. So I'm not attacking Booger. But I am attacking his opinion, which basically said that in some ways it would be easier to play both ways in the NFL because you don't have to play as many snaps and the tempo isn't as quick. So you have time to recollect and diagnose and figure out what's going on. No. First, on the actual point and the substance of what he's saying, there's about 15 or 20 fewer plays per game in the NFL. It's not a drastic difference, but also, yes, you have a little bit more time between plays. You know, you don't have as much time to do, though, is the quarterback getting rid of the ball. In college, the quarterback gets rid of the ball much, much faster than the NFL. The physical toll and the challenge of covering and playing a lot more man in the NFL versus better receivers every week, and the quarterback is holding on to the ball about a half second longer on average. It's a much tougher physical challenge in a lot of ways, and you're going against guys every single week that can embarrass you if you don't do it. So it's I'm not saying it can't be done. I just think it's the wrong thing to focus on right now. Second one, anonymous executive on the Jaguars, or second paragraph here. This is The Athletic writing this. The Jags' 2025 post-draft Vegas win total of 7.5 is tied with 6 other teams for 8th worst in the league, which suggests the pick going to Cleveland could be high. I have a hard time trashing people for where their pick is going to be next year because that's exactly what they were saying about the Texans last year, or the Texans after the trade up for Will Anderson. Remember how stupid they were because everybody knows they'll be picking last in the draft next year. You just gave up a number 1 overall pick. They made the playoffs. Hunter will really affect the game and will be great for the quarterback, but I would not have paid that much. We'll see when they're not picking in the first round next year how it feels, and if it's a top 10 pick, they traded away. That's fair enough. Yes, judge a lot of this next year. If you haven't yet in 2026. If you're not at the point where you've revolutionized the game of football and broken through boundaries like you're Amelia Earhart or Roger Bannister or something, then yes. The Jaguars later added 2 2026 third-round picks. Good on them, giving them welcome firepower next year in the absence of their own first-round pick. Anonymous Exec says, they had to feel really good about their roster to give up a high 2 in next year's 1, but is Trevor Lawrence the guy? What happens if he suffers his third concussion in 3 years? Huh? Yeah, what about that, Aziz Alshire, huh? Everybody makes these trades thinking they'll be 25 or later. It seems short-sighted. Again, I'm cool with the aggressiveness of it. Is Trevor Lawrence the guy? Because, for 3 years in a row, they've done something to help Trevor Lawrence out. First, it was Christian Kirk, and Christian Kirk had a great year his first year in Jacksonville. Then you had Calvin Ridley coming off his suspension. That didn't work out. And then Brian, even getting a really impressive rookie performance out of Brian Thomas, it's still not what tipped them over the edge. So now you're pairing him up with Travis Hunter, who, in my opinion, should be focusing solely on wide receiver, but it's probably going to be Travis Hunter, who's, he's coming in to play wide receiver after he's had to cover Nico Collins and Jaden Higgins for 10 snaps. And then he goes over to the offensive side of the ball, run a go route. Yeah. All right. I'm disgusted with what's his name there, the Magnificent Gladstone. Might not be members only. You've been getting ads. I apologize. So that's another benefit to members only. So this was supposed to be members only, and I forgot to. Apparently, I neglected to actually click that button. So if you do join the members only, when I do my live streams on members only, there's no ads. I try to respond to every comment. At least now, well, it's only the membership numbers are not high. And you also get, some days when I don't feel like I've got a polished enough prep situation to go live, I'll just get on there and ramble on and take questions and everything. And then during the season, for post game, I might do members only are allowed to chat during the public live streams. Travis wafer thin Hunter playing receiver against the Texans defense twice a year. Yeah, the Texans defense, they're violent. They have an appetite for violence. Who did our pick we traded for Will Anderson turn into? It was the one offensive tackle from the Cardinals. Because I remember Will had some nice snaps against him, and I'm blanking on his name right now. I don't see Travis Hunter being an elite cornerback nor wide receiver in the NFL. I think he'll eventually pick one to fix being average. Yeah, and that's the appropriate thinking is let's turn him into something good now. And then you can add on to say, hey, there's no boundaries, there's no limits. This guy's going to redefine football. And again, I cannot reiterate this enough. Travis Hunter is an awesome young man. I am impressed by what he did in college. He's very serious about preparation and work and all of that. He was Dean's List, had a high 3.8 GPA or something as a psychology major, so not taking some bogus major or something, taking an actual major in college. He's got everything you want, where you don't get nervous about the work ethic side or anything, but you're putting a lot on his plate while he still hasn't even learned the actual playbook on offense yet. And as far as being a divisional opponent, I hope that's exactly what they do. I hope they expect him to play 120 snaps in week 1. Lawrence is a Jag, just a guy. Jerzon Newton. Oh, that's right. Jerzon Newton also. Okay. I feel unwelcome all of a sudden. No. Don't do that, Meanster. Don't feel I'm not trying to create divisiveness. I'm not trying to create a there's no caste system here or anything, okay? It's not like the non-members or the untouchables or anything like that. It's just it's a way for me to feel pressure more than anything. Even though people are only paying $1 a month, I feel a lot of pressure from that. If you pay me $1 to do anything, I'm kind of wired to feel obligated to do it really, really hard. Let me tell you a story. I I was helping my brother-in-law out at his bar because he had a couple cleaners quit. So I was helping him out clean in the morning. And I would come in. I was like, yeah, I'll come and do it. I wake up early anyway. So we were up, for the weekend in upstate New York. And it was Saturday and Sunday morning. And it was like 3 hours of mopping and stuff. And I'm in there, and I'm doing it for free. And I'm like mopping and scrubbing. And I don't just mop. I scrub, damn it. I lean into it. My heart rate is 125 BPM the entire time. And I'm kind of thinking like, uh-oh, if Dusty gets here, I want to be sure I'm finished before. I got to finish this part before Dusty gets here. And I keep reminding myself, you're doing this for free. My God. So the $1 a month, I feel obligated to put more content out. And then I edit a lot of it. And then I put out more content that isn't members-only content. So there's everybody benefits. Everybody benefits. You should wear a members-only jacket during it. I've thought of this. I got to get my Pope Zaza Pope Zaza costume first. Derek, thank you for joining. We've had several people joining the members. Seth is a cheap hoe. Wait, now do you mean that as in like I'm stingy or like I'm a cheap date? I feel like either way it's kind of a compliment, I'll take it. Wait, I have a psych degree. Are you saying I'm not bogus? That helps my self-esteem. I guess it's better than the music composition degree I almost got a little. All right, here's where I would put you in the hierarchy of what I respect or I'm impressed by. I'd be more impressed if you got a music composition degree because I have zero musical ability, and even when I was learning how to read music in like 4th grade music class, didn't have a clue of all of it. I don't like the 3/4 time. The 4/3 time, all of that. I don't understand the difference. I can tap along with the beat and everything, but I don't get it. No, I would put psych in the degree of it's a legitimate major of the sciences. Like obviously it's a soft science, so it's not as hard as quantum physics or something, but it's definitely way more impressive than if you're doing something that a lot of college football players will do. A lot of people go into some of those, just kind of, like the nonsense majors, but they were really into it. I don't mean to, no, it's a legitimate major is what I'm saying. Yeah, I'll work hard for $1. All right. Just take the hoe out of it, man. They called me a name at graduation for the music one. Oh, yeah, good. People were like, oh, he's a cultured man. Oh, good for you. Real quick question before we move on to the Titans. I would like to learn an instrument. One way to keep the neurons firing and creating new connections as I age. Would ukulele be one of the ones that's easiest to learn, but you can actually carry a tune? Because I think I would enjoy the ukulele. And I think I might be able to play a ukulele around a campfire without being annoying. I think I could do that, at least for the younger nieces and nephews. Shoot. I've got my great nieces and nephews. I was talking about my nephew the other day, and my wife corrected me, not because it was relevant. And she said, well, he's your great nephew. And I was like, no, he's not. That's for old people. What on earth are you talking about, you stupid whore? Yeah, it's my great nephew. I'm not too big to play a ukulele, and I will point out to you like 2,900 Polynesian fat men who play the ukulele delightfully, and sometimes Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Ever hear of it? All right, you say I'll gain 78 pounds and play Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Like what was his name? Big S, whatever his name was. All right, let's get to the Titans. Wait, one more. Seth singing a tribute to C.J. Stroud with a ukulele around a campfire with s'mores would be delightful. I could do a live stream with a ukulele from the campfire. You know what? I'll do this at the end of the stream. I'll bring up a picture of our place up north and our campfire that overlooks my in-laws' property. It's awesome. One of my favorite places on earth, and where I will likely be buried someday, if I ever die. All right, the Titans. Cam Ward's the big story there, right? I'm gonna play the GM of the Titans. Here we go. Where is he? It's Borgonzi, isn't it? I don't want to mess it up. I always want to say Nate Bargatze. I think his name's Borgonzi. Or I'm messing it up. I'm going to Google this right now. Titans GM. Yeah, Mike Borgonzi. So Mike Borgonzi, previously with the Chiefs as the assistant GM, I believe. There were a lot of headlines this week about Mike Borgonzi comparing Cam Ward to Pat Mahomes. As much as I hate to do this, I have to stick up for Borgonzi a little bit because this is Borgonzi and what he actually said in response to a question about specifically Pat Mahomes.
Comparisons. Patrick, obviously a player you know pretty well. I know that's not exactly fair to compare him to someone like that, but do you put any stock in that?
Some of the things I mentioned about instincts and spatial awareness when we studied Patrick coming out, I thought Cam showed that. Now he's got a long way to become Patrick Mahomes, future Hall of Fame with 3 Super Bowls right now. But there were certain traits I think that I saw, that I've been around Patrick a long time. His ability to process and the instincts kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean, he's not direct. It's not like he came up here. Magnificent Gladstone would have said, we just drafted Pat Mahomes 2.0. If you thought you saw something with Pat Mahomes, just hold on to your knickers because this is a better version of Pat Mahomes. He didn't say anything like that. So I'll give Borgonzi a pass. Borgonzi did the right GM thing, which is that he said very specifically he's got a long ways to go before I would consider calling him Pat Mahomes. He said one more thing, too, and this is where it gets interesting, is simply, I don't know if I'm going to bring up the right one here or not. Let's just do that. Oh, I can't do it anyway. He had talked about the quarterback competition. I won't play the video. He talked about the quarterback competition and that there will be a competition between him and Will Levis. And I think people always hear that and they're like, whatever. But I think C.J. Stroud was best served by having as close to an actual competition as you could probably expect. I think Deshaun Watson in his rookie year, I could look back on that and say it was good for him to have been in competition, but that when you bail out on the winner of the competition after the first half of the first game, I don't feel like it was probably the absolute best thing you could have done. I feel like they should have a competition, make it as genuine as possible. I would expect Cam Ward to win that competition because, frankly, Will Levis still does a lot of things like a rookie who's got to learn more about the game of football. His judgment at times is just really curious. So the question with Cam Ward is, all right, I think there's times where he tries to stretch the play out too much, or there's times where he tries to make throws that his arm can't cash. And it's not because he lacks for arm talent. It's just because you got to learn that judgment and discretion. A lot of that is similar to what they said about Pat Mahomes. I mean, it was really, really tough to predict that Pat Mahomes would rein in a lot of his more aggressive or poor judgment tendencies from when he was in college. Andy Reid helped out a lot in that regard. And that's the other big thing. When you're making a comparison between Pat Mahomes and Cam Ward's not stepping into the same situation as Pat Mahomes was in Kansas City, where he has one of the best coordinators in the history of football as his head coach, and they were also a playoff caliber football team already. Will Levis is not Alex Smith. Sorry, I know people don't like to give Alex Smith his propers, but Will Levis, he's no Alex Smith. Anonymous executives on the Titans. There are so many things Kansas City had that so this guy's addressing the headline porn of Borgonzi, quote unquote, comparing Cam Ward to Pat Mahomes, which he really didn't do. There's so many things Kansas City had that I do not think Tennessee has, and is not the same player. You have to be really disciplined and understand that the worst thing you can do is put a young quarterback in a bad situation. In the big picture, I think taking Cam Ward was a no-brainer for them, but if it was last year's draft, Ward probably would have been the 4th QB. Yeah, that was a different executive. I agree with all of those things. And that's where, the poor Titans. Good job with that regular season win versus the Texans. This is impressive. Offensive line. You got the Titans can rest assured that they got guys fired by the Texans. They got Shaq Mason almost single-handedly from that one game. The one play of Shaq Mason getting tossed to the side by Tavondre Sweat, that alone was probably enough to say, okay, it's time. Shaq Mason's time is done. But it's not the same situation. You find yourself with a number 1 overall pick. Do you draft a quarterback that you don't quite think of as a number 1 overall guy? The Texans have been in that situation, unfortunately, several times in their existence. The first was with David Carr. And they drafted a quarterback in David Carr, who I don't think most people looked at as a slam dunk. Oh, yeah, this guy's going to be top 3 in any given year. And they probably should have gone otherwise. They probably should have gone with a Hall of Fame defensive end that they could have drafted instead. So is this that type of situation? Clearly, Cam Ward's a different type of quarterback than David Carr was. And I think Cam Ward's stepping into a better infrastructure than David Carr had. I mean, we started 6 rookies that year. It was... By the time Tony Vaselli wasn't going to play and Charles Spencer got injured, but I like Charles Spencer a lot, and you're down to a lot of guys. We had some solid players on that offense, but we also had 6 rookies. Some of those rookies would end up being good football players like Chester Pitts, but he was a rookie. And a few other guys that probably, if they were going to make a team in the NFL, they could have made the Texans and no more. That was a bad situation. So Cam Ward's not in as bad a situation like that, but excuse me. As a Texans fan, he does make me nervous in the same way Vince Young made me nervous. Is that, man, the guy's got skills. He's got more arm talent, at least as a prospect, than Vince Young did. But he's on any given Sunday, just like it was with Anthony Richardson, he can really do some damage to you. So, and you don't have the benefit of a bunch of film to understand and know what his tendencies are, what his favorite reads are, who his favorite receivers are. So it's a huge wild card. I would prefer not to play Cam Ward early in the season, just because it's as it is with Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is a horrendous NFL quarterback, but especially when you play him first game of the season, my God, he almost single-handedly beat you with a couple of spectacular throws. Luckily, he also didn't beat you because he wildly overshot a wide-open receiver, because that's what Anthony Richardson's going to do. But on any given Sunday, terrifying. More anonymous executives on the Titans. Titans president Chad Brinker said in January the team would not pass on a generational talent in the draft. The Jaguars think they got one of those in Hunter. Tennessee obviously felt differently and liked Ward enough to make the pick. That's a good point. Nobody thought it was a stretch to draft Travis Hunter at number 2. They thought it was a reach for how much the Jaguars paid to get up there. But people aren't even criticizing the draft position or saying that they reached in going up there. Nobody's saying, "Oh yeah, Travis Hunter would have been available at 5." They're just putting a side eye at the compensation. I'm cool with it. I like the aggressive move. The statements about it notwithstanding. But the Titans said, we like Cam Ward enough that no, we're not going to pass up at this opportunity at him or Abdul Carter or anybody else. Good pick, solid guy, will be the first one in the building. I don't think he's missing anything other than that he regressed during his first 2 years at Washington State, trying to make every play. The scheme brought out his true skill set at Miami. And that's another one where I think if he'd had more time, it'd be really interesting to see if Cam Ward had more time in that system and in that scheme. He's not going to get drafted any higher than he already did. He made the right decision in coming out. But the classic case of, man, Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, I don't know. He's got this one impressive year at LSU, and people are kind of ignoring how much improvement he made. But they're just wondering because is this a flash in the pan? As long as he's a guy that's willing to work at it like Cam Ward is, I'm excited to have him in the division. I like as much juice as possible in the AFC South. I would prefer that he be an extreme bust, but I'm not. I wish I were confident enough that he would be, because I think it's an absolute wild card right this moment. All right, I want to do the Colts. I got to get some of these. Let me get some of these. I'm only allowed to have 10 AV materials in here at any one time, so I have to delete some of them to make room for the Indianapolis Colts and all of Chris Ballard's magnificence. I should have gotten some Chris Ballard video, because he's another guy I like to hate watch. I'm impressed by Chris Ballard in general as a GM, other than his inability to find a quarterback. All right, let's see. Where are my Colts? Hold on a second. I only got one anonymous. Oh, that's right. I put them all on one graphic. Here we go. The Colts. Colts draft Tyler Warren. Second tight end taken, which is a surprise to many. It sounds like there were a lot of people in the NFL that weren't as surprised about Loveland going before him. A tight end like Colston Loveland is a dynamic athlete who can get open on his own and really affect the passing game, one exec said. That is more valuable to me than what the Colts are getting because Warren is not running away from anyone, including middle linebackers. Ooh, shots fired, Aziz Al-Shire. The Colts did fill a lingering need with a very good player. As many of you have pointed out, and I probably should have hammered this more, Texans have not been all that great versus tight ends, and this does provide a guy and might not have the same breakaway speed as Loveland, but I think is the complete package in terms of can develop into a classic inline tight end, but still be a receiving threat. I cannot worry about Tyler Warren until they show that they have a quarterback that can do something with him. And part of that, too, is on, I think, whether Taylor stays healthy. I mean, if you got a running back like him, that guy, he's shown that, much like Saquon Barkley did in New York, Taylor being healthy can help Daniel Jones out a lot. If Daniel Jones starts the majority of the games this season, and he's got a healthy running back and a good run game, and he's got Tyler Warren, then I start to worry about what Tyler Warren might do to us. If Anthony Richardson's the quarterback, I just can't worry about it. I cannot take Anthony Richardson seriously. Anthony Richardson's going to get injured at least twice this year, so I think Daniel Jones is going to get some snaps. That's when I start to get worried about Tyler Warren a little bit. And it's not like extreme fear or anything. I'm more worried about Tyler Warren being on the team 2 years from now when maybe the Colts end up finally trading for the right veteran quarterback or finally falling or stumbling into the right draft pick at quarterback. But right now, I can't get overly concerned about him. Let's see. Last quote from an anonymous executive. They're going to have a lot of hats that you have to account for in the run game. He doesn't create all his separation with athleticism, but he is really big at the catch point. He can adjust. He's going to make contested catches. He's strong. You can do a lot of things across personnel groupings with that guy. Yeah, that's all valid. It's all valid. And I really like Tyler Warren. I wasn't really in the mood to trade up for a tight end, either of those tight ends. But if they had, I would have gotten it. I would have understood and thought, all right, it does. I think for them, and I know Sari doesn't draft for need, et cetera, whatever. For the Texans, if you look at the roster composition right now, I think that the changes they made on offense showed that they're not afraid to get rid of high-dollar guys like Laramie Tunsil. They're not afraid to fire an offensive coordinator. They're not afraid to get rid of two other of the starting offensive linemen. They've got a tight end in Dalton Schultz who was way better 2 years ago than he was last year. Last year, he's never going to be a good pass protector, but he also shouldn't be in the position he was as many times where he can expose what a poor pass protector he is. And I think that's why Nick Caley was brought in. I think they probably, if you had to ask them, does Nick Caserio feel bad about the $12 million per year that Dalton Schultz is making? I would guess he would genuinely answer no. We thought that we could get this and that out of him. We still do think we can get that out of him. We just got to have better things around him. And then obviously Brevin Jordan comes back. And Cade Stover, I'm very intrigued by. I really, really want him to succeed. I think he's got the potential to become an all-around, at least complementary piece at tight end and a good run blocker and a good pass protector by tight end standards. But that's the big unknown. But there's three guys there right now, and I'm including Dalton Schultz in this. I'm talking my way into being not as down on Dalton Schultz as maybe I once was. Let's see. Let's get some comments here. Okay, so that's where we started. That's where we broke off last time when somebody fallaciously accused me of being too big to play a ukulele. I've got the fingers of a pianist. I don't have the thick and swollen farmer hands that I used to. Best to learn is a piano. I'm not going to do it, Ivan. I appreciate it. I'm not trying to become some kind of virtuoso that can play 9 different instruments and be a one-man band, okay? I just want to be able to carry a tune around a campfire and get my brain working a little bit. All right. The guy colluded with the Titans against UD. Who am I? I'm blanking on who UD is, Brandon. Sorry. Bro needs to chill. I think you're probably talking about the Titans GM. The $1 a month will help Seth buy a better mic stand. I know. No, it just keeps coming unscrewed because I'm too animated and I use it as a crutch. Thank you, though. Mahomes didn't reign in nothing. He runs around until something breaks. Okay, you know what? Okay, this is a good counterpoint to something I said earlier. He didn't reign in nothing. He runs around until something breaks in the secondary. Outside of that, Andy Reid makes every QB he's ever played with look better than they are. Yes, so you agree with me in Andy Reid's ability to get the best out of a quarterback. When I talk about Mahomes reining it in, it's in his decision-making. And a lot of the throws he made in college, it's always tough with an air raid quarterback, is they make a lot of throws in college that they're making it to a wide open wide receiver who's being, if he is covered, he's being covered by a guy who's 5'7". And you see so many of those throws where you think, all right, you can't get away with that in the NFL. You're going to have to rein that in. And he did. You have to credit him with showing good judgment and limiting interceptions. And it's not like he's not like an Aaron Rodgers extremely low interception guy, but he reined that part of it in. I understand what you're saying. He still does freelance a lot, but he does it within a kind of a structured system of their scramble drill that Andy Reid has done a good job of helping them facilitate. So it's a little bit of both. I do think that he's learned to rein it in. New member, thank you, James D. Appreciate it. Very much appreciated. How do I feel about the running back situation? I feel good. I think that Woody Marks has been one of the things that people have criticized with the Texans because they traded up for him so aggressively. I think with Woody Marks, let me see if I have I don't think I have as a standalone. I might actually. I've got Nick Caserio talking about trading up for Woody Marks. Or maybe I don't. So he was on Texans All Access the other day, and he was talking about that trade up for Woody Marks. And what he basically said was, here we go. I guess I've got the audio of it. Let me see real quick. Caserio 5. Let me see if this is it. If I don't have it, if I don't pick right, then we'll play this Caserio, and then we'll move along.
Not to get emotionally tied to one particular player. You understand the player. You've graded the player. He has a certain role or value for your.
This is actually good because I don't know. I feel like Nick is contradicting himself a little bit when he talks about this first take, which is not falling in love with the player, and then with the Woody Marks explanation that I have next.
Team, or you think. If you have the opportunity to draft him, great. If you don't, then you just kind of move on to the next thing. And we were doing that really Thursday, Friday, and even into Saturday as well.
Yeah, and I do think for the most part, their board is organized in such a way that they feel pretty good about, hey, we've got bands of players here that we like, and we can move around the draft, and somebody that we like is probably going to be there. I don't think you can accuse them of never reaching just because this is, if this is the right take, if this is the right clip.
With that team, they're not interested. Go to the next team. I think we ended up trading.
Okay, so they're talking. I think no, this isn't it either.
With that team.
All right, never mind. Screw it all. So basically, he said we were sitting there and we didn't have a 4th or a 5th round pick when Woody Marks was still up on the board, and that there was a lot of real estate between that, where Woody Marks and perhaps other players were. So they went ahead went up and got him. I think, he was asked specifically about Woody Marks there, so maybe he was talking about what he liked in Woody Marks. But they did go up, and what a lot of people perceived as an overdraft, or he wasn't as high on their board, they did like Woody Marks compared to a lot of other running backs, and that was the guy that they wanted right there. Was that the right evaluation or not? We'll see over time. But I think in them trading up, he had talked before the draft that they probably had a smaller draft board or a smaller pool of players that they felt good about than a lot of other teams. I think it feels like this year they might have pushed more guys out of their draft pool based on not feeling great about their football character. I think they just want to bring in nothing but the right kinds of guys, especially on offense. So they felt really good about Woody Marks. And then he talked about how that receiving ability is something that can help out the team. To answer the original question of how do I feel about the running backs room right now, I think that Woody Marks could provide something that they don't really have right now, is a very electric third down back type that could do some real damage as a receiver. Joe Mixon can do what he can do, but it might be a different element, and that helps a lot with a younger quarterback. Whether it's C.J. Stroud, Pat Mahomes, Peyton Manning, whoever it might be, like it helps those guys a lot if they've got an easy option to dump it off to. It was one of the things we grew frustrated with this year with the Texans was they couldn't even seem to scheme up the easy stuff. They couldn't execute a screen without it looking like every defensive player on the field knew that a screen was coming. And then when the wide receivers were supposed to be blocking, they didn't know who to block. The offensive tackles would be out there, and they didn't know who to block on a screen. It was abysmal. So they couldn't do that well. And then on some of the dump-offs to like a Gumbawale, who a lot of times was your best receiving back out of the backfield, they had some nice little gadgetry that they used to get a Gumbawale open, but it's not like he's not somebody that linebackers are super, super nervous about having to cover, where I feel like with Woody Marks, there's potential for that. He's a fourth-round back. If he makes it as a contributor, that is a check plus. So you can't, think, oh, yep, he'll be right out there contributing right away. And it does make an interesting battle with Gumbawale and Damian Pierce, and then I think J.J. Taylor and the other kid. Why am I blanking on his name? It happens. Mike Leach was forward thinking for sure. If you like Woody, get him. Draft turnover year after year is just facts. What was the Mike Leach comment, if I missed that? The whole thing about Mike Leach, and Mike Leach was awesome at what he did, obviously. But in transferring the air raid to the NFL, the biggest obstacle really is that it's still a relatively simple offense, and it's really good against college defenses where you can kind of predict pre-snap with more comfort, like exactly what you're going to see post-snap. And when you got 5 ridiculously fast wide receivers out there, it works really, really well. But to advance it, like Cliff Kingsbury this last year, it looks like he finally came into his own and actually being able to merge the two. Do you think the UDFA center is the front runner for the starting position since they gave him the 3-year contract, sight unseen? Not necessarily. You know what? I haven't looked at the terms of that contract yet. No, I don't think there's anybody that's a front runner at any position. And I say that with 100% sincerity. I think the Texans realized the error of their ways last year in basically writing Kenyon Green in as the starting left guard and writing Juice Scruggs in as the starting center right from the get-go with no competition. You had your offensive tackles who were barely practicing at any given time. They weren't playing in the preseason together as a unit because you had all the vets out there. Can't risk them. I think that it's going to be a wide open competition, and I don't think Titus Howard has the edge other than just by playing ability at any of his starting positions. You can only tell so much from training camp without being out there in live action. So it's more likely that Titus Howard is going to be the starter either at right guard or at right tackle or at one of the guard positions at the beginning of the season. But I think it's going to be a genuine competition. So I don't read into the contracts at all. And yes, Titus Howard did just restructure his contract. That still doesn't mean that he has to start in week 1. I think he will. I do think he will, but I don't think that. I think it's a genuine and wide open competition because they have to. They have to start from square one with that offensive line and really live true to their fundamentals. You got to live up to your posters on the wall. There's a lot of coaches out there that love to put a lot of motivational posters up there, but then they kind of, okay, we'll make an allowance for this guy. And we're like, well, okay. I mean, the rule doesn't apply to everybody. You can't do that when it comes to competition. Guys got to genuinely feel like they're fighting for their position. And I just don't think they had hardly any of that on the offensive line. I mean, it was hard to get yourself benched last year. Do you remember how hard it was for Kenyon Green to get himself benched? It looked like he might have been trying to get a Section 8 out there. And there's nothing. It wasn't until he finally injured himself by with CJ's leg, right? After getting CJ sacked and then having CJ swung around and hatcheting Kenyon Green himself. That's what it took to get him off the field. So that was the opposite of competition. That was like you had a bunch of trust fund kids who were just going to fall jelly side up no matter whatever happened. Bullock has to start over Jimmy Ward. Way better player. He earned it after next year. I suspect that he will, and I think especially with C.J. Gardner-Johnson in the mix, I think they're going to look at Jimmy Ward as an awesome guy to have around as a veteran leader, and that he's going to be great when he has to come in relief. But with Jimmy Ward, more than anything, you got to keep him healthy, and I think his body's just broken down continually these last few years, and now he's well into his 30s. I'll be surprised if it's not C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Caden Bullock. It's pronounced Bullock, which is hard. It just does not roll off the back of your mouth the same way Bullock does. I know, pause, whatever. Let's see. The O-line didn't have to practice in the offseason because idiot Slowick had the tight ends and halfbacks doing all the blocking. Do you think Jimmy Ward starts this year or next year? Okay, that was a response to that question. I'm going in reverse if you guys can't tell. In terms of Woody, you're playing for Leach. Yeah, as far as playing at USC. Right. I mean, I guess he got to showcase a lot of what he could do in the Lincoln Riley system. But it's not like he's coming into an air raid system. I don't think, and I don't know if that's what you're suggesting or what have you, that maybe this is going to be more like an air raid. I would say no on that. It's just it gave him a chance to showcase a lot of the receiving ability. Like, got a lot of touches as a receiver. Wasn't Slowick the only OC in the Shanahan tree that couldn't execute a screen successfully? I don't know. It feels like it's a perennial. My barometer, a lot of times, I feel like screens are a good barometer for how much are you coaching the actual nuts and bolts of football. Obviously, the run game is another one of those things that can be a barometer for that. And news alert, they weren't good at run blocking or running the ball last year. It's just the weirdest thing. If you're not a Texans fan, or maybe you're new and you're just trying to get the lay of the land, this is the weirdest thing last year that happened, was that Joe Mixon would have a game where he rushed for 140 yards, and immediately after the game, you could say with a straight face, they really didn't run the ball that well. It was a whole bunch of Joe Mixon getting hit in the backfield or stuffed at the line of scrimmage, and then him breaking off a couple of long ones. But they didn't run the ball consistently and effectively enough on first and second down. And a lot of that is when you combine that with the poor pass protection and the mental errors in pass protection, they weren't schemed up well just in the simple fundamentals of things. And then with screens, if you watch the 49ers when they're really humming as an offense, if you go back to 2023 and before, I didn't watch that much of the 49ers this year. They run screens like clockwork, and their offensive linemen are all out, just parked 1 yard past the line of scrimmage, waiting for the ball to come out of the quarterback's hand, and then they're down and they're on body. And there is a large, clean swath of green grass for the receiver or the running back to run with. And part of that starts with not giving the tells to the screen. And there's so many ways an offense can tip a defense off to the screen. First, by formation and situation and just old school tendencies. And then second, in the quarterback himself, the body language of the wide receivers, the alignments and the body language of the offensive line and how well they're selling the run first. And the Texans were just bad at it. It was just piss poor execution all the way across the board. Seth, how do I subscribe to the 99-cent subscription? Usually I'll put a link in this immediately after we get off here. But you can also, I think if you go to my homepage on my channel, there should be a link there. And thank you for considering it. Jimmy Ward giveth and taketh away. Yeah. Jimmy Ward, when he came in, it was a Tennessee game, right? When he had to come in to play the star, and did really well. Jimmy Ward, Jalen Petrie, those guys are just kind of dialed in to play that position. They don't, they're going to they're going to be lacking in one-on-one man coverage ability versus a slot, but the physicality and the run game, the ability to play zone, the ability to cover some guys, the ability to blitz, especially with Jalen Petrie. I think that's where Jalen Reed comes in, the safety out of Penn State. I think there's a lot of, I would say Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith is the guy that I thought of with that. Jalen and both those guys really, I think, have they're kind of dialed to play D'Amico Ryan's style of defense. But I think Jalen Smith in that star position could be impressive. He could kind of be the cornerback version of what Jalen Petrie does in that role, where might not be as big, might not be able to do some of the physical things as well as Jalen Petrie, but might have better man coverage ability. So if he works out as a pick, there's some opportunity for him to get on the field in packages at first, where you might have, there's so many different ways you can do nickel and dime these days. You can do big dime, you can do big nickel, you can do the all cornerback version of dime, and I think hopefully Jalen Smith gives you some of that versatility. I think that was the first time I've messed up one of the Jans. All right. If you're on the app, you can tap the join button. So thank you, everybody. And wait. Ahead of the Rockets game, I want to play you one of the greatest moments in television history. And this comes from, so this isn't ahead of the Rockets game, but it's ahead of the Clippers playing a Game 7 this weekend. This is Mavericks reporter Brian Damaris on James Harden. This was before one of the playoff games last year, and he pretty much nails the James Harden experience. Who I'm pulling for James Harden in this Game 7. I want him to defy the narrative a little bit, and yet we all know that James Harden late in the playoffs kind of becomes the worst version of himself. This is Brian Damaris. Other than the Dwight Howard part at the beginning, kind of nailing it with James Harden.
I hope you're taking notes. I'm telling you in advance, you're welcome for the wisdom I'm about to spew. Because, listen, I get on my knees every night and pray for someone to believe in me like Daryl Morey believed in you. You wanted a certain coach, they brought in Mike D'Antoni. You want to play a certain style, they played it. You wanted Dwight Howard, they brought him in and got rid of him when you were tired of him. You wanted Chris Paul, they brought him in and got rid of him when you were tired of him. They brought in your old friend Russell Westbrook. You want to go to Vegas on off day?
Yeah, so that was all true except for the Dwight Howard part. I never got the sense that James Harden was wanted Dwight Howard, and they had kind of a crusty relationship the whole time. But yeah, they went and got everything they wanted that James Harden wanted until he wanted to skip town.
They looked away. You wanted the team to stay over so you could go out at night. They changed the schedule, and it didn't work. And you know what? You said, I'm going to break up with my whoopee. Not good enough. I see the bright lights in New York. I want to go there. My old pal, Kevin Durant. It's going to work. The big three. And all after 1 year, you wanted out. You realized, oh my gosh, I took this guy for granted, the guy that believed in me. I went back with Daryl Morey. They traded Ben Simmons for you. How did they pull that off? And you know what? You went there and you got a partner who got the MVP. He won the MVP. And what did you say afterwards? You said, they didn't hand me the reins. You're the point guard. You were.
Yeah, that's just I can't pile on James Harden. I think the way probably the majority of people do. Yes, I remember the way he left, but there were good times. There were a lot of good times there. There was a lot of him collapsing in late in playoff series versus the Spurs and the Warriors. But there was also a lot of he brought relevant Houston basketball back to Houston, and I can never fully hate him for that. So I'm gonna get off here. I appreciate everybody for joining. If you became a member, awesome. I try to put out at least 5 to 7 extra pieces of content per week for the members, and I'm also there's no ads during the members only streams, and I try to respond or reply to every single comment during those streams, so some benefits there. And then when we get to the regular season, there'll be some benefits on top of that. So thank you, everybody. Hit the like button before you go, and subscribe by all means. You'll improve your life.